HBCU. And Bob, I love it, love it. I love it, love it. I love my HBCU. And man, I hope my team they won, yeah. 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 I tune into the HBCU Sports Lab to see my team won loud. If they loud, I'm quiet as a mouse. But if they won, too tired. I'ma do the job, yeah. Dr. Bill, you know what he be talking about Charles. They know what they be talking about. They compress the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they want a lot, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach the lesson, and you gon' learn today,
Let me know when y'all ready.
How they play, boy, you gon' learn today, how you say they play, how they play, yeah. We represent that swag, that MEAC, 11 say, what's up to Tennessee, stay, tune into the
Y'all got all your stuff?
Yeah. All right, ready. This is Dr. Cavill with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop. Let me say that again, Charles Bishop. Got that off key there. Welcome and thanks for joining us for the only weekly sports talk radio show that is dedicated to exploring the sporting HBCU diaspora with this unique HBCU cultural identity, including the teams, the bands, coaches, athletic directors, and classics, presidents, as well as commissioners, homecoming events, all types of things going on. And this week is really exciting for me because we include the HBCU ARC Conference, Athletic Research Consortium Conference, for those that don't know the acronym there, as well as the Ben L. Cowell Senior HBCU Football Award Banquet. Yeah, it's going down.
See you coming around how you pronounce that name.
The show seeks to provide innovative, progressive, and informative dialogue about the week's HBCU sporting events, issue ideas from a fan's perspective. We look at the Southwestern Athletic Conference, better known as the SWAC, the Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference, better known as the MEAC, of the NCAA Division I, Southern Intercollegiate Athletic Conference, SIAC, the Central Intercollegiate Athletic Association, the CIAA, of the NCAA Division II, the Gulf Coast Athletic Conference, GCAC, of the NAIA, independent programs such as Tennessee State of the OVC, I guess we could say Hampton of the Big South,
Yep.
Langston of the Central State Football League, be now the Sooner Athletic Conference. All these teams changing conference, making moves, getting it done. And as Mike came in there, don't start nothing, Mike.
I'm starting already.
It's convenient. It's convenient. Give us a shout out as we get started. We got Jimmy L. Wilson already on the line. He said, "What's up, Doc? Bishop Mike, what's up?" Cassandra Myers is watching. Yolanda Mitchell has jumped. Michelle, I should say, has jumped on. All those jobs open in the SWAC and the MEAC. He's still talking about them jobs. Man, they out there working. They say they trying to get somebody that can win. We gonna see.
Yes, indeed.
So let's jump right into it since got a question about some of these job openings. Are there any additional news? I think another position has come open, but it's in the sport of baseball. Did you hear about Bethune-Cookman?
Yeah, Bethune-Cookman, their head baseball coach, I should say, took a position with the Toronto Blue Jays, Jason Beverly.
Yeah, it's hard to give up a professional matchup. It kind of came at an odd time, but when the job comes to you, I guess you got to be prepared to take it.
Yep.
Make sure you're ready to go with it. Any other news out there that our listeners might want to know about?
I see Andy Fuller tabbed as interim coach at Alabama A&M.
You think he'll be able to keep it, or is he just hold the spot?
Well, that was my next question. Well, I think that interim tag is interim. It's just that.
Oh, wow.
He played.
Don't get into these interim and acting tags. That's a highly contested
Yeah.
item right now in the country.
He played for Auburn with 93, 94, 95, so he's got a good pedigree, but I think interim is interim with him.
There he goes. He told me he got a big pedigree because he had Auburn, just because Auburn won a football game last night.
Water cold.
The War Eagles or whatever they call
War
it.
Eagle. But you also have MEAC honors. This today came out.
MEAC honors. Who's on? Give us some of the highlights, especially the offensive, defensive player of the year.
Offensive lineman of the year, Brandon Parker from North Carolina A&T. Rookie of the year.
Well, A&T with 11-0.
And 12 Aggies on the first team MEAC honors.
It's hard to argue with that when you go undefeated.
When you go undefeated.
Who else?
Rookie of the year was Kalen Newton. He's making a name for himself.
Yeah.
Huge strides for himself at Howard.
Yeah. He well deserved. No surprises, you said there.
And of course, the coach of the year, Rob Broadway, for the North Carolina A&T State University Aggies.
MEAC trying to steal a little sunlight from the SWAC championship game and give out there.
They threw it out there early this week.
Interesting.
But yeah, they tremendous number of athletes from North Carolina A&T paced the first team and
anybody stand out? Anybody in a position that you said I would have him higher or lower? Anything like that? Or any other things catch your eyes?
Well, I've seen Jason Murphy from North Carolina Central. I thought he would have been a first-team wide receiver. He had a tremendous season for the Eagles, but it's really hard to argue against all the A&T Aggies on here. I mean, you take a look at Lamar Raynard, Markel Cartwright, running back, Lamar Raynard at quarterback. You also had Elijah Bell, who's one of the best receivers in the MEAC. He's first-team wide receiver. Of course, the offensive line for North Carolina A&T, Darryl Mack at center, Brandon Parker, probably one of the best linemen, not just in the MEAC, but in FCS football. Of course, he's the offensive lineman of the year, and you also had Marcus Pettiford. So they had three guys on their first team offense from the North Carolina A&T offensive line. So.
Yeah. Certainly, pretty awesome there. What about this being the SWAC winter meetings? Anything that you're intrigued about the winter meetings? Is that big coming in this year? Is no big deal? Or anything that you're looking to come out of the meetings that you're hearing about? Give a shout out before you answer that. Langston English has joined us. Katina New Williams. Mike Washington is up here. He's already flirting with the cameras. He's trying to get more FaceTime. All those jobs open.
Oh, come on now. All this hate on the set. Seriously.
Say, man, that's what happened when you try to take over the show. You know, you think I forgot about that a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, boy.
Yes, sir. Payback. What about the SWAC winter meetings? Anything? I mean, obviously, some are looking maybe for an update in terms of this being the last SWAC football championship game. Yeah, so any direction, obviously, updates in terms of the basketball tournament. Yeah. You hearing anything might come out of this meeting with that?
Nothing thus far, but always curious about what direction the conference is going to go in once you hear some of the little tidbits that are flowing from the meeting or whatnot, especially with regards to the future. More SWAC championship. What I think a lot of fans are asking. What exactly is the conference doing, and what direction are they trying to go in, football and basketball?
Jimmy jumps in here and throws us out there. Any of y'all want to take this? He said, "Will there be a new commissioner?"
I guess that was my point. Will there be a new commissioner?
Well, last I heard, I know that he hasn't had an update in terms of his contract extension. Yeah. He's gotten that, and we're talking about Dewar Sharp. He's been in terms of lead of the conference. So I hadn't heard any indication that his contract will be extended or it will not. So as far as I know, it's still a question on the table. Certainly that would be huge news in terms of, as you said, the continued direction of the championship. Also, any question coming out to Jimmy also says, what about the football scheduling changes? Obviously, they went to a 7-game football championship schedule 2 years ago. They played it this year. But then last year they talked about the cancellation of the SWAC championship game. Mm-hmm. I can give some updates to that. When they scheduled the 7-game conference schedule, they did it for a 4-year period. But at the very least, you're going to have a 2-year rotation before they visit it. I'm sure they are looking at it. But one of the concerns you have about trying to change the schedule is the fact that you have many teams that have already scheduled non-conference games. So then you're going to have to get into the buyout issue in regards to changing the schedule. So that's something they can look at, and they can determine whether they have the ability and schools are willing to buy it out, or will they extend, which means if they don't, they do have to roll out this tiebreaker scenario. There's been some discussion on that, but I'm not sure if they're ironing that out in terms of what will be the tiebreak issue with no SWAC championship game. So that's very interesting there. We'll get into some more updates in terms of possible calls there, but I think we have our first caller on the line. We have John Grant, Executive Director of the Celebration Bowl. Is that correct?
I'm here.
Good to have you on the line. Get you excited about the Celebration Bowl. We're just a little over, essentially, 2 weeks away from this Saturday. I'm excited. I've already, as everybody don't know, by the summertime, I booked my tickets. So I'm in line and ready to go about what's going on with the Celebration Bowl. Before we get into SWAC, as this is the big SWAC weekend, who's going to determine coming out of the SWAC who will be the matchup, as we already know the winner of the MEAC, which is North Carolina A&T. You have an undefeated team on that side. You have a potential of a one-loss team with Grambling State, a potential with the Braves. Either one of the teams for the SWAC is coming back for their second time. Will it be Grambling coming back for second consecutive season after winning last year and trying to do the back-to-back factor, or will the Braves return? So it'll be interesting in terms of what's going on in that matchup. But before we get you into the excitement of the SWAC championship game leading up to the Celebration Bowl, give us some updates of what's in the works and the plans for the Celebration Bowl as we get ready for the Celebration Bowl as it comes up.
Well, we've been working very hard. The team has over the last several months, preparing for this year's bowl game. It's unique for us this year because we spent the last 2 years in the Georgia Dome, and to watch that venue be imploded last week was, had mixed emotions on it because I had worked with them for many years. But we are excited going into Mercedes-Benz Stadium, which is a new $1.5 billion stadium here, and it has all the bells and whistles and amenities that we know that not only the teams are going to really enjoy playing in that stadium and being in that stadium, from the locker room facilities to just everything for them, but also that the fans are going to have a great experience in that venue. So we're excited to open the college football bowl season this year in Mercedes-Benz Stadium. We will be the first bowl game to be played there, and so just really looking forward to bringing that to fans. And of course, the city of Atlanta is all geared up, and we've had many conversations with different venues that are preparing to host Atlanta to the fans who are coming in to hear it. And one of the things I will say, and I'll put this out there to fans in the MEAC, to the SWAC, I'm sorry, but MEAC fans have been booking. Of course, they've already clinched North Carolina A&T to come in, but I'm just surprised in the fact that the Marriott Hotel, I've got a report from them just this week, and they're at almost 98% on the bookings of the room blocks that they had.
Challenge! Sounds like some of that old Cosby show back in the day when you just challenge. I see it out there. That's a good point. I guess MEAC says, what's up? Yeah.
Let me tell you, MEAC fans are coming. They're buying the tickets.
That's good.
We've sold out on their side in terms of the club area, so they're now buying tickets on the SWAC side in the SWAC club.
Wow. Okay.
I was sharing with fans when I was down in New Orleans this past weekend for the Bayou Classic that you don't need to sleep on this one because if the opponent on the other side, their fans are creeping around on your side of the stadium.
Somebody's trying to make a statement.
Yes, indeed.
They want it all blue and gold in there.
Go ahead, Aggie. Go ahead.
Well, I think it says a lot for fans who on that side who have said, look, we're coming in to support North A&T's representing the MEAC. And I know that whoever comes out of the SWAC this weekend, your fans are going to be just as excited. But the interesting thing is that, the MEAC gets such a head start. But I know SWAC fans won't sleep on that.
Nope.
So we're looking forward to a great weekend.
Certainly. Let me let Mike jump in here and ask a follow-up question before I come back.
Yes, John, this is Mike Washington again. Dr. Gabriel said, he expressed his excitement. Every now and then they let me speak on this show, so let me express my excitement as well. So I guess
somebody showing up.
Hearing you speak, I guess, can you, give us a frame of reference and compare the pregame activity and sales compared to last year's?
Oh, we're ahead of last year without question.
Okay.
There's no question about it. This is a big game this year. Both conferences are coming in here tied, 1-1. This is the thriller. I call it like Ali Frazier's, the battle in the bins. These are the two heavyweights. But I can tell you without question, and I hear this from the fans on the MEAC side, and it's easier because they've clinched and they already know who's coming, and there's a lot of energy over there. They're coming in because they're excited about coming to Atlanta. They're excited about seeing people from the SWAC, about being a part of the activities that are going to go on here, and we are going to be featuring the inductee class from the Black College Ball Hall of Fame. They're all committed and going to be here on.
That's a nice
and we're going to introduce them on Thursday night, and we're creating an opportunity there where that event has been a little bit closed in the past couple of years, but we're opening it up.
Oh, wow.
Fans will be able to get to come. We'll have a limited number of tickets that are going to be available. We're expanding it into more of an award show type format, which will give us a chance to get more people involved so they can really come out and participate and be involved in it. So that's a change we're making, and we're just looking, everything's coming together. We've got the NFL back with us again this year, as well as something that I've got up my sleeve. Only the people who come will know. But once they come and they experience this event that we've got going, that we're putting together, they're going to know that this is something that they're glad that they didn't miss. So those who are sitting on the sidelines wondering and waiting and hoping, let's see what we're going to do, are going to really miss some great things for this year.
Certainly. I've known John Grant for a short time here, but it seems like ages from the framework. And when I'm sure when he tells you he has something up his sleeve, you better be ready.
I was going to say, he pulled out.
He want to miss.
He pulled out the up the sleeve.
Not the rabbit at the hat, but up the sleeve.
Exactly.
Go ahead, Joe.
Mr. Grant, of course, we've had an opportunity to come for the past 2 years, and I'm always blown away by the game day atmosphere the day of the Celebration Bowl. Just talk a little bit about ESPN being there, and they kind of opened up their college game day, and this being, of course, the first bowl game of the year.
Well, this is a big deal, and I think that we still haven't, as fans, truly got to wrap our heads around how big of a deal this is. I mean, anytime you open the college football bowl season, and that we have a national platform on ABC that, ESPN puts a lot of resources into this. It's hyped along with all the, the bowl season, and you're going to see the intensity levels turn up this weekend on Sunday when the ESPN spends the entire day with the bowl matchup show. And we'll, of course, the Celebration Bowl, we'll have our matchup announcements by then. And, just to have HBCUs and these HBCU conferences as a part of something that large is without question, in my mind, the biggest thing that's happened in HBCU football, period, in its history. There has been nothing bigger, no stage larger, nothing grander than what we have with the Celebration Bowl.
Great point.
Yeah.
As you point out just how big this is in terms of that. Well, final part of this, let's go into the SWAC championship matchup as you come down here and hand out the invitation, the official invitation after the end of the game for the winner of the game. What are you looking at in terms of this particular matchup?
Well, I see, that's a trick question for me. So what I'm curious, because you guys you spend a lot of time analyzing the team, etc. And I did not hear the pregame part of this. I'm sort of interested in what you guys think as these two great teams, Alcorn State and Grambling State, are going to be meeting up this weekend. What have you been seeing all season? And who do you think will come out there a winner?
I'm gonna let Charles jump in here, give him a little bit of time there, and then I'm gonna let Mike follow up.
Well, of course, Mr. Grant, Grambling is Grambling, and they have continued all season to really. You thought there'd be a little bit of a drop off with the number of guys they lost last year, but they have continued to be as dominant as ever this past season. I will say, Alcorn with their quarterback Lenoris Footman, they're a completely different team. And I think they're going to be excited to get a little payback here in this SWAC championship game. I think it's going to be a really fun game.
Yeah, and just to build on that, I think if you look at the game within the numbers, offensively, the teams can compare. Grambling won an earlier contest this year. I think it was like 41-14. Grambling, as Charles alluded to, has been continuously opportunistic. They continue to find a way to win despite the circumstances. In addition to that, on the other side of the ball is where I have my concerns. Alcorn State is like 6th, 7th. They haven't been above 5th in the SWAC in total defense all year. And I think that may be their Achilles heel. And Grambling, much to the surprise of many, has been in the top 1, 2, or 3 in defense as well as being in the tops in offense. So you have to give the edge to Grambling because of their tenacity and their balance on both sides of the ball, at least within the SWAC.
Sir, I got to give it to Grant. We were going kind of postpone this until a little bit. He bring it out now.
I'm sorry, is that too much detail?
No.
There's more.
But I'm going to take, from this perspective, I think Grambling has figured a way to get it done. Yeah. And the way they break it down in terms of what they've done offensively. But I think surprising a lot of people is just how solid they are on the defensive side. We've seen that to some degree with significant matchups. They did it against Alcorn early in the season. They did it against Prairie View that has a pretty offensive, explosive team. They did it against Southern, senior quarterback. They shut him down, forced him to 2 big interceptions. In a lot of ways, a different matchup. So I think I have to go with Grambling. The thing that you have to be nervous about if you're talking about the Grambling State Tigers as fans is the fact you got Footman. Yes. Senior quarterback Footman, he set out against Jackson State to make sure he's healthy. He's going to come in this game healthy, and he has the ability to change the dynamics of the game, not just with his hands, but with his feet. So you have to take that into effect. And you saw what happened last year as they jumped out and couldn't quite hold on. So they have that puncher's chance. I just do not think the Braves have quite enough to get it done, and I think you're going to find out Grambling coming out of the SWAC with 1 loss, and you're talking about a fascinating matchup if that happens to be, particularly with the coaching scenarios that a lot of people are going to want to talk about, with Broadway being at Grambling for a while, now at A&T. 2 fan bases that are rich in terms of what they do, particularly with Grambling, and thinking that the throne is always theirs. Aggies would want to do more to knock them off in regards to that. So that I think that's the matchup. We're not going to give you too much. We're going to tease you a little more about this. But with that being said, Grant, we're working with Michelle Jinks to talk about airing a show there live before the matchup starts up. So we're really excited. We can kind of get that tease with some people. Look forward to even a formal announcement coming on later with that. How about that, Grant?
Well, you know what? I love the fact that, of the analysis that you guys provide. We are, we're looking for it. Know that it's going to be a great matchup between two great institutions. The interesting thing, as for me looking at it this year, and the importance of this is because this is the last SWAC championship.
Yep.
That you have two teams that have been in the same two teams who've met up in the SWAC championship, sort of owned it over the last few years.
Right.
What do you guys think about that?
I think it tells you where the power is in the conference.
Pretty much, exactly.
And you're going to have to take that next step. You have Southern right there that's knocking on the door, Prairie View right behind them, but they're going to have to find a way to take that next step. I think it's dynamic, but one thing that really comes out to me is the fact that the three top teams, arguably in the conference, all had senior quarterbacks.
Very much so.
So what I think you're going to look for next year is the influx of these new coaches coming into these four teams. Obviously, the next step with some of these coaches that are entering their third and fourth year, when you talk about Prairie View, Texas Southern, and see what they're able to do. And the final thing is how are these three teams going to maintain this power when they're losing the senior quarterback leadership?
I think it also talks to the ability to not only recruit, but retain.
Yeah.
Retain talent in the pipeline.
Yeah.
Right, and you'll
over
get
the
a
course of
big
2 to 3
glimpse on
years. So, and I would be interested to see with these coaching changes, can they maintain this pipeline?
Yeah, I think you're right. Well, Grant, I want to thank you for that. We're going to get you back on next week. Let us know any final things before we make it that way, or the week of, whichever you would prefer in terms of Celebration Bowl, because we want to really talk about this matchup and hype it up. But I want to thank you for coming on and giving us your time.
Well, I appreciate that. I was just getting excited, but in interviewing you guys.
I think you on the slot turned this into the Dr. Grant interview.
I noticed that. I give you
That was kind of slick. That was good.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to seeing you down in Houston this weekend.
All right, certainly. Please give me a call. We got to go out and do lunch.
Will do.
All right, take care.
All right, thank you.
Man, another great interview. I think that brings us right up on the hour, and looks like we'll get our next guest in here. But talk about the matchup as we get into it, because we'll ask Coach to bring up that final analysis of the Labor Day Classic that's moved to Thanksgiving weekend, and then we can go into some other analysis. I think we have Coach Willie Simmons on.
Yes, sir.
Coach, how's it going? Got that winning season. Brought another trophy. Back to Prairie View.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
Man, it's been a long season. Before we get into the totality of the season, let's talk about this last matchup. It was a grudge match. You talk about the rivalry, and it started out that way, but you talking about an explosive offense, an explosive team that you had ability, boy, to put those 14 points on near the end of the half, particularly scoring that second touchdown, literally with seconds on the clock. Really had to feel good about going into the locker room after doing that.
Oh, no question at all. Like I talked about going into the game, when you enter those type of rivalry games, especially on the road, you never know what to expect. And we've been playing really well offensively the last 2 weeks, and then we get out there and we don't know how to take a snap, how to cadence, get the ball. It's like we had to go back to football 101. It came out of that first quarter with no points, went through most of the second quarter with no points, and then we finally settled down and were able to put 2 quick scores on the board, as you alluded to, right before halftime. But I tipped my hat to Coach 3, defensive coordinator. The defense played lights out the entire game. They kept those guys off the scoreboard, kept us in great field position for the most part, and allowed us to finally settle down and be able to play football that we were capable of playing. And once we did that, we felt confident that we would be able to continue to sustain drives and finish drives and then put the game away that we were able to do.
Certainly, Charles, you want to follow up?
Yeah, Coach Simmons, we kind of touched on it just a little bit in the post-game presser, but how exciting is it kind of going into the offseason with Nico Hollins and going into next year? I think he had maybe 300-yard games to end the season.
Yeah, before you answer that, Coach, as we get into it, you talked about this last week, Mike. If he was able to put up another 300-yard game, that you thought he should get special recognition of maybe getting in there and the BNL Cowboy Senior Football Award.
Absolutely.
Well, that goes down tomorrow, and because he did his part and your announcement, he will be one of the Prairie View players
that's
that will
awesome.
be there tomorrow.
You mean I actually get just a little bit of
just a little bit.
Just a little bit.
Get on him, Coach. Tell him.
I'm just a peon.
Tell him who showed his head, Coach.
We definitely appreciate the publicity, but again, it's very exciting. You know, what he was able to accomplish in the last 6 weeks of the season is nothing short of amazing. You know, to be thrust into the situation that he was thrust into after basically being a backup for the first half of the season and having to make his first start, against Alcorn State, a full-time defending Eastern Divisional champ at their homecoming, and to perform the way he did, to go on the road against a tough Southern team, on the road and play pretty well. It shows the type of player that he's capable of becoming. The kid's only 19 years old. He's a redshirt freshman, so again has a very bright future. Again, we have a great nucleus of guys returning along with him, especially up front on the offensive line. Had some issues there this year, but we expect to get a few guys back from injury and be able to shore up that part of our offense. And two really good running backs returning, Dwayne Tucker and Caleb Brooks. We got a tall task to place those receivers. They were really good players. All three of them finished in the top 10 in the conference in reception per game and yardage. Of course, because they're hard to let the conference in touchdown passes. So, got a tall task of finding some guys on the recruiting trail who can come in and replace them, or the young guys that we have on campus now, taking the step up and assuming those leadership roles. But very excited on the offensive side of the ball. Defensively is where the concerns are. We basically are going to be depleted up front. We lose 6 out of our front 7 to graduation, and our starting safety Riley Johnson. So definitely got to make up some leeway on the defensive side of the ball. Because again, I think it's going to be critical that we can stop people. I think we'll be able to put points up when we go at the ham, but we definitely got to be able to stop people next year because we'll continue to face explosive offenses throughout this conference.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Coach Simmons, we also talked a little bit about this at the post-game conference, but as you kind of start to reflect on the season, I don't want to get into Dr. Kabil's question, by all means. But there were some things that we started to see. I think you delved into a little bit of the Wildcat in the fourth quarter. So given that you approach the offseason and you're able to replace personnel, are there 3 or 4 things that are swimming around your mind that you want to build up to and then look to infuse in the offense next year with Nico?
Well, I think the important thing is that in the offseason we really do a great job of studying. We always try to go and visit people, people who are doing really good jobs on the offensive side of the ball across the country, especially in the state of Texas. There's so many prolific offenses throughout the Big 12 Conference that, we want to make sure that we're making the most of his skill set. And we started the season with a running quarterback, so most of our offense was catered around being a zone read team, a power read team, a read option offense, whereas when we made the shift to Nico, who's not as blessed as LaVelle and Jalen with running the football, but is very cerebral as a passer, very accurate. We want to do more things in the passing game and maybe some more RPOs, take advantage of some of those type things. So, that's an exciting time of year to get in the lab and figure out what we can do now, with the personnel that we have, starting with the quarterback position, but also trying to take into account what our offensive linemen are comfortable with, and then what type of skill players that we can put around them. We think we have some pretty good players, but again, you definitely want to make sure that you maximize all of his talent as a quarterback.
Certainly, with that, before we get into this matchup and go in from a coaching perspective, we're doing a live feed here, and so some of the people, we had John Grant on previous to this, the executive director of the Celebration Bowl, and so he turned around and started, it seemed like, interviewing us. But the reason I bring that up, Coach, is a live feed. Some of the people was like, man, these guys are spot on their analysis. So I just wanted to throw that in. Sound like we know what we're talking about. So with that, before we get your analysis and really get into a coaching perspective that I think the fans would like to hear, coaches that have played both these teams, what do they look at in terms of that type of matchup? But before, I wanted to give some kudos, if you would, to Kadero Hodge, as he's also a finalist, wide receiver, redshirt senior, D-Lo, Mississippi, obviously. He had a great season, one particular game where he broke a record held over 40-plus years there at Prairie View A&M University. And so you can talk about him a little bit, as well as Anthony Stubbs, Millville, New Jersey, linebacker who's a junior, so he'll be back next year, along as we already said about Nico Hollins out of Fresno, Texas, right here in the backyard. So you were able to pick up players from Texas, as you said you would, a quarterback who's a redshirt freshman. Talk a little bit about your excitement of these particular players and being up for awards such as the Ben Calvo HBCU Football Award tomorrow.
Oh, it's definitely a great honor for those guys. We had our last team meeting this morning, and of course the entire team was excited to know that those guys were finalists for such a prestigious award. But Kadero Hodge is a guy that, of course, has a great backstory. We signed Kadero when we were at Alcorn State. Like you say, from Mississippi. He's actually related to the McNairs. Was a pretty sought after quarterback coming out of Mendenhall High School. Had some mid-major type offers as a quarterback, and some people want him to play receiver. But, he had that mindset that he was a quarterback, like most of us are, at 18. But we were able to get him there at Alcorn. He sat behind John Gibbs for 4 years, a red shirt. He and Lenore Footman actually came in the same class or not. And then, after that fall semester, after the spring semester, he decided to transfer. He felt he wanted to play receiver and felt he had probably a higher ceiling at receiver than at quarterback. So he transferred to a junior college in Mississippi. And then, of course, that following year or spring was when I accepted the job here, and just checking on him one day, just looking through my phone, saying, I hadn't talked to Kadero in a while, let me check on him. And, I said, hey, man, I took the job at Prairie View. He was like, man, bring me with you.
That'll work. I like that. Appreciate you, Coach.
Bring me with
On the clock.
I like that.
I was like, hey, come on, And, he comes here and battles really 2 years of injuries. And he was really starting to come into his own last season. It got hurt the third game of the season, a high ankle sprain and sprained MCL, and really shut down his production. After 3 games, he was having a phenomenal year, and it really hampered him from having a big year last year. But he came back this year determined, really worked hard in the offseason, came back a step faster, more explosive, and as you can see, he up until last game, he was leading the conference in yards per catch, which is a huge stat when you catch that many balls. I think he's finished second in the conference in catches per game. And so, a high volume receiver, very productive, comes to practice every day, works his butt off, and really has a shot at the next level. He's probably the one guy that most of the NFL scouts come through to talk about because his great size, 6'1", 205-pound receiver. He takes his shirt off and he breaks the internet. He literally broke the internet.
He looks the part.
He's gonna pass the eye test, and so the production now matches that, and he really has a bright future. So I'm really excited for him. And then Anthony Stubbs, the linebacker, like you said, out of New Jersey, played at Monroe College, came in and didn't even start for us at the beginning of the season. He was backing up Stephen Guillory. And Guillory went down with a knee injury, and he was thrust into the starting lineup, I think, week 3. And the moment he stepped in there, just play after play after play, he's all over the field, tackles for loss, big hits, strips, fumble recoveries, you name it. He and Jalen Williams were playing at an extremely high level all season and really set the tone for our defense this year. So really happy for those guys. Like you said, Stubbs has another year. He'll probably push for some preseason all conference accolades, possibly All-American accolades next season because of the play that he had this year. So all 3 guys very deserving of the award. Of course, we'll be honored and blessed to have the second recipient, in the 3 years of the award. Of course, John Daybell had the first year. So be very excited to be able to bring it back home to Prairie View this year.
Certainly. Appreciate that insight, Coach. Now, what a lot of the streamers really want to know about is the coach's perspective of going into the SWAC championship game. Break down when you went up against these 2 teams, what did you see in this matchup, and take us into a fan's perspective of some things that we need to look for that generally we don't pay attention to as fans or even analysts.
Yes.
Well, the first thing I think that you always have to consider is how difficult it is to beat the team twice, in the same season. Grambling beat Alcorn pretty handily the first time around. I think they called 7 turnovers, which again, Grambling's plus 21 in turnover margin this year, which is unheard of.
Yes.
So they're doing a phenomenal job of protecting the football as well as getting them on defense. And so that's going to be a huge challenge for Alcorn to protect the football. And if Grambling can continue to play at such a high level as far as creating turnovers, I think that's one thing to look for. But I think the most interesting matchup is that you have the conference's leading rushing offense, which Alcorn is, against the league's top rushing defense, which Grambling has top rushing defense. So it's going to be a matter of who can impose their will. You know, that old saying, when a immovable, whatever it is, immovable object, unstoppable force, that type of analogy.
Right.
You got a team that's going to try to run the football. Alcorn prides itself on being able to run the football. They're running for about 200 plus yards a game this season. Grambling's only giving up about 90-some yards rushing this season on average. So can Alcorn establish the run? You know, whether Lenore Footman plays or not, I know he's been banged up. But can he and Noah Johnson and DeLand Turner, who's the conference's leading rusher, establish the run against Grambling? You know, can Grambling continue to stuff the run and make Alcorn one-dimensional? If they do that, they give themselves a great chance because, again, you know, Alcorn prides himself on being able to run the football. So I think that's going to be the biggest challenge, along with the turnover differential. And then, again, it's going to be a game with the playmakers are going to step up. You know, last year, Martez Carter had some very huge plays for them to bring them back to win when they were down 17-0. You know, can Marquise Wofford, you know, be the dynamic player he was 2 years ago in the SWAC championship game, you know, when they beat Grambling? And so, again, which playmakers are going to show up on the biggest stage of the season? You know, I think it's going to make for a very, very great game, an interesting game, a game that, you know, again, two really good teams. I think the conference will be honored if either one of those teams represents it in the Celebration Bowl, and, you know, I'm excited to watch them play. You know, again, I'm not going to pick a winner, but I think
we wouldn't do that to you, Coach. We know. We know those.
It's going to be a close game, but again, I think with what happened last year with Alcorn jumping out to a big lead against Grambling, I think they kind of underestimated them a little bit. I think they give Grambling a little bit more of an emotional edge to not underestimate this team because, one, they beat them really bad in the regular season, but they do understand that this is a dangerous football team.
Yep.
Yeah, great analysis there, Coach. We want to see if we can put a little homework assignment on you since we're in the spirit. You're coach of a collegiate program. Would love to have you back in 2 weeks. Don't know what your schedule would work out. Certainly next week if you want to analyze and talk about maybe some recruiting. But in 2 weeks, we'd love to have you back in to talk about the celebration matchup. Obviously, you'd be able to go in great detail with the SWAC program. But if you wouldn't mind taking some time out to go in and dig in a little bit about North Carolina A&T if you hadn't a chance to look at them and bring us a matchup.
They look like a bunch of Greek gods.
Simplify everything.
Exactly. Thanks for making it plain.
They are monsters.
Yes.
Coach has the way he gets it done.
I talked to some of my buddies who they played against this year. One at Kent State. They beat Kent State last year, beat Charlotte this year. I have buddies on both of those staffs. And my buddy at Charlotte said, man, when I walked down and saw those cats on the other side of the field, I said, we in trouble. Coach Broadway's done a phenomenal job there, bringing some really good players, some great-looking players in there. They're rolling. I mean, they're hitting on all cylinders. You're talking about a HBCU who's going undefeated. I don't know when the last time that happened. You know,
we
not
lose
a regular game in the regular season,
Yeah.
and they played FBS opponents.
Right.
So, again, whoever wins this game Saturday better be ready because A&T is playing at a whole nother level this year. So,
Absolutely.
But yeah, I'll definitely do some more research and would love to be back on the show and give my analysis. I may even come down to the studio.
That'll work. We will say this: if you can find a way to make it to the studio tonight, we'll make sure you get a steak
on Dr. Cavill.
On Dr. Cavill.
All right.
He owes a steak.
Certainly, yeah. That time we got you that penalty, that fee right up. I guess I do owe you a steak there, Coach. Thanks for your time. Certainly, thanks for the whole year in terms of sticking with us, coming on regularly through a hectic schedule and giving us a breakdown of your analysis of the season. We really appreciate that, and it makes the show a much better show when we get to hear your perspective, particularly from coaching right here in the SWAC, in the greater city of Houston. Prairie. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you, guys. Happy holidays, everyone, and let's look forward to speaking with you guys again.
All right, take care, Coach.
Thanks, Coach. Go Panthers.
Yeah, great analysis and breakdown in terms of that. It's been fun to have a coach on all season long with the ups and downs of the season, been in good spirit, didn't brush back any in regards to what was going on Obviously, in some cases, you look forward to the season, things don't necessarily work out in your factor, but you still find a way to come in and give us serious analysis of what's going on. I really appreciate
Absolutely.
that. Much kudos. Have to go about saying this is the winning season. That's 3 consecutive winning seasons. Third time in the school history that's happened. So that says a lot as you're trying to rebuild a program. A lot of people get caught up in terms of what happened 2 years ago, what everybody else is doing. But the cultural change that you need, obviously Prairie View won that championship in the middle of 2000.
Yeah.
In terms of that, but as you change it and they dip down, didn't quite work out under Northern. Obviously, the championship won under Frazier, Henry Frazier III, as he tries to get back into the football mix of some of these openings. Will throw his name out there. Somebody's going to get a winner if they decide to go ahead and get it done. Not only that, you're talking about somebody that's hungry to get back into it as well, who's going to not leave a waking hours to get in there and get some things done. Want to throw that out there. And I wanted to give Heist Northern some love in terms of that. Couldn't quite work it out as a head coach, but he was the defensive coordinator of that championship team and won various other championships. And it's something about getting that second opportunity. Hopefully that, you get a lot of people that are concerned about these retreads, but you can see with the talent he brought in, what Willie Simmons was able to do. You can also talk about what a coach does to get that second chance. We see it in college oftentimes, outside of the Power Fives. You see it certainly in the NFL. It's something about getting that second opportunity because you learn so much of what you didn't do the first time.
Exactly.
I think some people need to think about that in terms of them looking for a new coach. Sometimes we run too fast and we're so ready for that shiny object over there. And a lot of times they're going to do the same thing as they need their first opportunity. It doesn't work out. So I think that's interesting as we kind of get into this coaching perspective. But as we're talking about this matchup, let's jump right into it and go a little deeper inside the numbers, Charles. What is your thoughts? We kind of got into it. I think Coach made an excellent point when he started talking about that defense, and I saw your eyes light up. Is there something I'm sure that you wanted to kind of talk a little more about and point out that caught your eye?
Yeah, I think for all that we think about with Grambling in terms of Devontae Kincaid, Martez Carter, how explosive they are offensively, defense has been their calling card this year. They're one of the top defenses in the SWAC. Darius Christmas, he could very well be SWAC Defensive Player of the Year. They get after the quarterback, 41 sacks thus far on the season. They're a tough defensive ball club. So, as we, kind of talk about that a little bit more, it's going to be just really interesting in terms of how can Alcorn impose their will against a defense that's been so dominant this year. And one of the things that really caught my eye with Alcorn, they're one of the most penalized teams in the SWAC. And I think that's a concern going forward.
Yeah,
well, we have Coach on the line, but I want you to jump out there. But I want to hold on there as Coach is listening. I want to see his analysis as he breaks down the Labor Day Classic move to Thanksgiving weekend. I want him to talk about how challenging is it to impose your will on a team from that perspective. But Mike, break down the analysis before we go to Coach Haywood.
Yeah, one thing I was going to say is the plus 21 turnover margin.
Yeah.
Not only is it a turnover margin, but the opportunistic ability to turn those into points.
All right, and
you
saw that in Bayou Classic with that first early turnover, which ultimately was the difference in that game.
Yes, or to take advantage of penalties and turn those into points. And so a lot of teams with good turnover margins can't make those equate to points. And Grambling, is their defense, when I say opportunistic, has taken advantage of those turnovers and those penalties.
Certainly. Let's bring in Coach Mike Haywood, Texas Southern University. My understanding you're on the road doing some recruiting. You said you were going to get out there. Are you still on the road, Coach?
I am in Mississippi, Louisiana, and Texas this week.
Charles over smiling. He said, "You know what you're doing." He kind of got nervous. Jackson State fan over there.
You're eating up all the talent over there.
Before we get in a little bit about the recruiting in the area and why you're in that area, what you're particularly looking for that you can talk for it. Let's break down this last matchup. Really, the defense stood out to me pretty much throughout the entire game. Got a little tired late, but boy, you talking about a grudge match early in the game. A lot of excitement about what that defense for Texas Southern able to do against Prairie View A&M, particularly early for most of the first half until late in that second quarter.
I think defense played really well in the first half. We had 2 breakdowns in the end. They lined up in, double slot formation, and we had a corner, freshman corner starting out there. Actually, we had 2 corners starting for their first time out there, and so they ran a push vertical, and he didn't see it, and the guy just ran right behind him for a touchdown. Then on another one, we didn't get the safety's push over. We were disguising a Porter's coverage. Backside safety didn't push over, and we didn't get to the vertical seam fast enough, and they hit that vertical seam down inside the 2-yard line and went in and scored. But outside of that, in the first half, I think our defense played fabulous. Offensively, we struggled the entire game, but we're going to have to do some things to get better on offense.
Certainly. With that, Mike, would you follow up with a question?
Yes, Coach. One of the things we talked about in the post-game conference was, kind of some of the mental errors by PV. I have at least 4 or 5 that I can count, and unfortunately, TSU was unsuccessful in converting those into points for whatever reason. Talk us through what your conversation was with the team at halftime and addressing some of those deficiencies.
Well, one of the things we talked about is opportunities, because we're given opportunities and not taking advantage of it. And we're coming back out after halftime, and we're going to have to apply pressure. We're going to have to take more shots to get ourselves back into the game, because we're not being consistent with throwing the underneath passes and catching them and turning up and making back yards. So we're going to have to come out from an offensive point of view to be able to run the ball and take shots. And we did not convert on the shots in which we had opportunities on. We didn't convert on the penalties that were given to us also that were called. Defense, we talked about holding on. And defense came out in the first 3 series. We had a stop, we had an interception for a touchdown, and then we had a 3-and-out. So we had 3 good series, 3 back-to-back. And then offensively, we didn't do anything to help. And so we ended up keeping the defense out on the field too long, and they ended up getting a little fatigued. So, we're just going to have to do a better job of moving the football next year and, make the appropriate moves on the offense for us to get better.
Certainly. Charles, did you follow up?
Coach, you've talked about it often in terms of wanting to establish a physicality in your program. Kind of, if you will, just shed a little insight on the strategy on the recruiting trail.
Well, let me go to the team first. And one of the things that I said to the team is that your summer is going to be spent in Houston, Texas. So we need all the help we can get from the alumni to make sure, and Falcon and staff to make sure that these guys have an opportunity to have jobs during the summer, because we need to keep them there this summer. Mm-hmm. Due to their early start last year, we really didn't have them for the summer, except for maybe 2 to 3 weeks. We need them there the entire summer so we can continue the program, because we are not a mature enough football team to do what we have to do when we're not being overseen. Mm-hmm. All right, and I think that's important for us to know. So we have to make sure that we keep these guys here the entire summer. They can go home for 2 to 3 weeks, but you're right back in the grind. And so we have to make sure that we do that. And hitting the recruiting trail, there's certain things, like I told the kids. I said, we have a good freshman and sophomore class. I said, the senior class is gone. Not many juniors are out on the field playing for us. I said, but we need more leadership out of that junior class that's going to be seniors. However, what we're going to do is that we're going to go out and fill some of the voids with JCs. So that means that they're going to come in, have 2 to 3 years left to play, and we're going to use our JCs to help fill some of these voids. We're going to fill 1 at quarterback. We may fill 2 or 3 at tight end. We're going to fill multiple ones in the offensive line and the defensive line, and we may take 1 at outside backer. But we're going out there recruiting guys that can come in and play instantly.
Yeah, it's my understanding you got coaches out there in California as well, obviously with the high JUCO right here in Texas, JUCO, and you in Mississippi trying to fill those voids. So I certainly appreciate the work that you're putting in there. Want to transition? Go ahead, Coach.
No, we have a coach in Texas recruiting this week. We have a coach in California. and then I'm over, and we've already hit every 14, all 14 JCs over in Mississippi, and then I'm going over seeing the ones in which we've already offered, meeting with their family. Like I had parent meetings this morning, started at 9 o'clock, and went through all afternoon. Now I'm on the highway back again, going up around Jackson right now. But at the same time, we have to make sure that we get the appropriate guys that can come in and contribute right away. We're not looking for guys to be backed up. And then on Sunday, I fly out to California, and I'm out in California the entire week. And I'm going out there once again to meet with families, meet with moms, dads, and the young student athletes and all their high school coaches and college coaches as well, so that we can fill the voids in which we have, because we got to make a significant dent this year.
Certainly. Appreciate that insight, talking about the recruiting and taking the program to the next level and really getting that key insight in terms of what particular areas you're looking for. With that, if we transition just a little bit slightly here in regards to players within the program, Sean Jones out of Dallas, Texas Southern University, had some injuries this year, but fought through a lot of things and was able to get Ben El Cabo weekly honor twice this year. And with that, he is coming back for his second stint as a finalist for the Ben El Cabo Senior HBCU Football Award. Talk about the importance of having players of that caliber that are up for awards like this.
Well, I think it's an outstanding opportunity for Sean. Sean's a really good football player, a good person. And I think for him to be honored for his participation in which he gave on the field, I think is outstanding. At the same time, Sean, Sean wasn't even on scholarship last year. Sean was the tailback before he goes to the linebacker. And he's having an outstanding career for us. Wow. And, he's a leader for us on defense. And we look for him to be significantly better next year as well.
Certainly another reason, as you said, to find a way to get these kids to stay around Houston, getting to the alumni, those that have the opportunity to employ these young men so they can stay around school in regards to, one, pushing their education and also strengthening their body and their mind to help for a successful season in 2018. With that, let's talk about this SWAC championship game matchup. Obviously, you had a chance to play both these programs in the game. Can you break down the matchup and go inside in a way where the fans particularly don't always look for? What kind of things can we look at as fans, and a lot of times even analysts? Coach, what do you look for in a particular matchup like this?
Okay, well, let me ask you this question because I don't know this answer. What is the turnover margin for Alcorn? Because I know that Grambling is plus 20.
Yeah.
So what is Alcorn's turnover margin?
Alcorn broke even this year. Grambling's plus 21.
Plus 21, and what was Alcorn again?
They broke even. They were right at zero.
Right at even. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So when you look at the turnover margin, I'll go to Vince Dooley. Vince Dooley used to be the head coach at Georgia. He said the best pass is a toss. He tosses the ball to the tailback. That's the best pass. Well, I don't believe if they have the appropriate game plan with the quarterback in which they have on the zone read at Alcorn and the two running backs in which they have, because I believe they have the best running back in the conference. With the two running backs in which they have, if they don't turn it over at the running back position, I think they have a great chance to win the football game, because Grambling has a tendency to apply pressure. And the pressure in which they apply basically comes from their self-confidence. Because when they get down, they're still playing like they're ahead. Because of the confidence in which they have. So if they can eliminate the turnover margin, and they run this zone read with this RPO where they're reading that weak side linebacker, if the quarterback makes smart decisions and makes solid throws and put it on his body instead of having to reach out for it, then they won't turn the ball over very much. They may turn it over once, but that won't kill the game for them. On the other hand, Grambling, they're going to have, first of all, they're going to have to force that quarterback out of the pocket, because he has what I call the Vince Young syndrome. Mm-hmm. The Vince Young syndrome is that somebody told Vince Young one day, hey, if you want to be an NFL quarterback, you need to sit in the pocket. Well, I told Vince Young, look at 1, 2, and take off and run, because you need to use what God gave you
Thank you.
Your leg.
Yes, sir.
Well,
Led them to a championship, Coach.
Right. A national championship.
That's right.
But what somebody told this quarterback at Grambling is that he needs to be a pocket passer.
Wow.
And he doesn't want to run. So if they force him out of the pocket and get him to run, then they have a better opportunity to have some success. But once he starts to run, you better have somebody there that be able to tackle him in open field, and not a linebacker, because they'll make that linebacker look silly. I think Grambling has a good offensive line. I think the best part about Grambling is all the blitzing and stuff that they do on defense. I mean, there is no rhyme or reason to anything in which they do. I mean, there is no technique or fundamentals. I told them when we were playing them, you have to cover them up. And if you're able to cover them up, there's going to be seams, because their philosophy is see ball, get ball. You know, and they do a good job of see ball, get ball. They just run the ball down.
Yeah.
But I think that it's going to be an outstanding football game. If Alcorn does not give in to the pressure and fumble the football from the tailback quarterback position, Alcorn will win the game.
Wow.
And that goes against everything that everybody else said there.
Well, you broke it down. Wow. That's why we want to know, and that's why we bring you to provide that expertise and look at things differently than we would look at it. And we appreciate you sharing that. One last thing.
Mark my words, though.
I got you.
If Alcorn continues to run the football,
Yes.
when they get down, because they're going to get down at some point in the game, but if they stay to the game plan to continue to run the football,
They'll be
and
okay.
don't drop back and just start throwing it, they'll win the game. If they drop back and throw it, they're going to lose the game.
Certainly.
They can't do that. They don't protect well.
No.
Certainly. As you've been breaking down tape all season against matchup, have you come across any of the teams in the MEAC, particularly North Carolina A&T?
No, I haven't come across them. I haven't watched any of that day.
Okay.
I saw them on television one night.
What did you think from what you saw on television from a coach's
I thought
perspective?
they were fast. I thought they were extremely athletic and fast, and
That's what everybody
the
said.
offensive line did a good job.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Certainly.
And protected the quarterback.
Appreciate that insight, Coach. Appreciate that insight, Coach. It's brilliant to get a different perspective than what we do, as I said, as fans or as analysts in terms of breaking down these games. When we get a chance to get a coaching perspective, we really appreciate that. Certainly want to say safe travels while you're on the road this week as well as next week in the air. Want to say happy holidays to your family. Didn't get a chance to really bring that to you. And thanks for coming on the show weekly throughout the season, breaking down previous matchups and upcoming matchups. We really appreciate that. We'd love to have you back on in a couple of weeks to talk a little more about recruiting when you can, if that works out for your schedule.
Well, I really appreciate it. And I want to say thank you guys for having me on your show. I really appreciate coming on every Tuesday. And I want to say happy holidays and Merry Christmas to everyone and to the TSU family. And look forward to seeing you guys around during the holiday. And I am cooking Christmas dinner at my place.
Certainly. I'll find a way to get out there. I want to see what you're able to work with, Coach. We're going to test that out.
All right, I'll see you guys later. Have a blessed day.
Take care. Go Tigers.
Go Tigers.
Tigers.
Go Tigers.
You know, Dr. Cavill, I will say, Coach Haywood casting that wide net over in Mississippi.
Yeah.
14 JUCOs over there. I think at last count, I looked at 5 of them are ranked nationally. You're talking about teams, of course, a team featured on Netflix, Last Chance U, East Mississippi Community College, #1 team in the nation. Grambling's linebacker, Darius Christmas, came from there. So, you know, you're talking about a tremendous amount of talent within the JUCO community over there in Mississippi. So, you know, that's the place to go. Everybody talks about, you know, coming to Texas and rating Texas for talent. Well, the same thing kind of happens in Mississippi, rating that JUCO talent.
Yeah, great point that you make there. Let me get in here and give some updates for the Ben L. Calvert Senior HBCU Football Award. It's scheduled for tomorrow. Doors open at 6:30. Dinner starts at 7. You still can get your tickets, 281-330-1341. If you want tickets to the event, we can get that. We're just about at capacity, so make sure you get to me if you want that. I told you a little bit about Prairie View's representative Kadero Hodge, Nico Hollins, as well as Anthony Stubbs. Talked about Texas Southern representative Sean Jones. Grambling State has 2 representatives on the list. One, the kicker, Grambling State redshirt junior out of Lamar, Texas, Mark Orozco. Got to make sure I get his name correct throughout the season. And then obviously last year's winner is Devontae Kincaid. He's back. Grambling State senior quarterback out of Dallas, Texas, all world, all everything. And one of the things he talked about when we went to Birmingham during the season, he asked, we talked about somebody, asked him about the award. Yeah. He smiled, he said, can I win it twice? Yeah. I said, you put up them numbers, you can win it twice. Well, he certainly put his stamp out there and is credited in terms of not making this necessarily maybe a hard decision, as he was represented for 5 weeks throughout the season as the Big Bend Cowboy Offensive Player of the Week. So it'll be interesting in a lot of ways to talk about who comes out of this event tomorrow with the Big Bend for a lot about that. So just wanted to make sure we gave that shout out again. The event is tomorrow at the Sheraton Suites, Houston, near the Galleria. The doors will open at 6:30. Limited seating as we put everything in. We do have a couple of tickets available. You can call and lock down your tickets, 281-330-1341. That's tomorrow as we do the HBCU Football Award. And that's the Big Bend HBCU Finals. For those that didn't realize, it was announced in 2015 by 3C Communication. The Heritage Sports Business Academy, Inc. recognized a football player attending an historically black college and university in the state of Texas, or was born or played high school football in the state of Texas, and or played at a Texas-based junior college and continued their career playing for an HBCU, and who also exhibits the enduring characteristics that define Ben L. Calvo Sr.: determination, diligence, integrity, performance, familial teamwork, fraternal, and community engagement. He played in 1925 to 1929. That's the first decade that the SWAC came to existence. So the pride that we have in the SWAC, HBCU Sports, the third HBCU football conference out there, started with private schools in the state of Texas. For those that probably know the history, may have forgot it. Now it is all public institutions. Obviously, Langston was the first public school to come in after Prairie View was one of the founding members, and that kind of started the exodus of the private schools and the entrance of public institutions. Well, he played at Wiley College, and he played at Wiley College at the time when the private schools were really dominating HBCU football, particularly nationally. Wiley College got it done, winning a co-black college national championship in 1928, winning 4 to 5 SWAC championships during that time. He played as a freshman in the inaugural season of the what we call now the State Fair Classic in Dallas in 1925. Obviously the halfback. So a lot of history right here. So we just thought it was, when I came across this history and saw the spelling of the name, obviously I was enamored and said, hey, I recognize that. Same spelling as myself. Actually in the book, it was, history was spelled actually incorrectly as Caviel during that time, and dug a little different, and called my cousin Ben L. Calvo and said, hey man, you seen this? He got your name there. He said, yeah, that's my grandfather. Wow. So I was like, wow. I said, Ben, we got to do something about that. And to his credit, Ben and then his father supported me in my efforts of getting this going. You all came on board as part of the board members to making sure we got this done. So I want to personally thank you all for being a part of this history, and hopefully we can find a way to keep pushing this forward and getting it done as the opening part of the HBCU Athletic Resource Consortium Conference, the HBCU ARC, where we have researchers from literally all over the country come in to Houston to talk about HBCU athletics. So that's a whole different perspective. We're probably going to do a little rearranging since they're talking about closing out the SWAC championship game. So don't be surprised if we find a way to push this into the spring and find a way to reestablish it and push this and take it to the next level after we celebrate in 3 years. 2 more years. This will be a 100-year celebration of basically talking about the conference in a lot of ways. So I'm really amazed about that. And then 8 years later, you're talking about 100 years of when he started playing football. It's that quick around. So we have some big picture things that we'd like to do. We're going to work like the Dickens, if they would say, to find a way to see that he can get his rightful place in terms of SWAC Hall of Fame. We do a great job with players that have played in the 70s and sneak a little bit to the 50s. We certainly do a much better job of current players that played 80s and 90s that are being recognized. But in a lot of ways, if we're not careful, we forget about a history. We've lost a lot of those documents, so we don't have to have the statistics. But players that are written about in newspapers, I think, stand out with statistics alone, letting you know how powerful they were in terms of the endearing part of the Southwestern Athletic Conference, what we know as the SWAC. I think it would do us a lot of justice in history if we find a way to put some of these players into the Hall of Fame. Certainly if we can find a way to catch up with their family and honor them posthumously. So we'll look at that. Obviously, you have the Texas Sports Hall of Fame, Black Texas Sports Hall of Fame, some things that I think we need to look forward to. And so those are the next challenges I have in trying to move forward. But with that, don't want to be too laborious and get on here as we kind of come up on it. Get some shout out to some of these people over here giving us some love. Demetrius Gatewood is out here. Kenny Boo Spencer, not really worried. My concerns is the turnover. Tanny Taylor talking about getting on it. Kenny also talked about the analysis that the guys provided. Spot on. Footman is a game changer, but remember, we locked him down on the first game. Footman was ineffective and was pulled. So I was like, all right, I got you. Michael Jones said you guys will be shocked after Saturday. He just putting it out there.
Revelation.
All right, Mike.
Kenny said about what? He put question marks. What do you think? And so we got some analysis for these people here getting out here. Want to give some shout outs as they do what they do. Gary Norris Gray, Broadway versus Gibb, both out of Grambling in terms of their post experiences. What Jimmy is saying he expects for the Celebration Bowl. So good love, good participation, getting some shout out there. Good evening, gentlemen. Tina is on here, getting it in here, getting her information, and she's talking about it. So that's just some information we got out there with some people following us and wanted to make sure we give some shout out. Ken Rashad, sure he'll be down here in Houston. We need to make sure we catch up with him as he does with the TSPN Sports and keep everybody informed of HBCU football. Now the HBCU Sports page there. Some people are saying very little, but well-deserved in terms of the announcements out there. He said, Tina says Grambling mentality is to storm the land and burn the ships. Reggie Flood is out here watching.
I like
that. What's up,
I'm going to borrow
fellas?
that one.
Tina says recruiting is very important. HBCUs are getting talented athletes plus great and better facilities to go with it. Way to go, HBCUs. I agree with you, Tina. Great shout out, great analysis there. Some people are asking each other who coming to Houston, so they already making plans. I love to make sure we putting people together.
Yes, indeed.
Say, Mike, don't be cheap. So that's Jimmy. So we talking about somebody not coming in town, not you, Mike, a different Mike.
Okay.
Where is he going? Because Mike sure ain't cheap, boy, I tell you that. Look at Coach Barlow. That's another one. People are shouting out there may need to get another shot back in the SWAC. So just giving some shout out to some of these people. Carlos Brown is on here. Mark Overton, getting in here. Trey Allen, get some love. Paul Johnson, finally give some shout out to you there. Dwight Moore, Terrence, giving some shout out there. Donald Gay, Stephen Washington, the old classmate of mine at Prairie View, brilliant guy there. Jimmy Wilson, Shamika Williams. Yes, we got a link to the Big Ben Awards. You can go to www.thg-agency.com and then click on Big Ben, and you'll get all types of information about the awards that you want. Lawrence McCall, the introduction does our intercall. He said King Tab is in the house. Jimmy said, thank you guys so much, sir. Just wanted to get everybody out there. We thank you, Jimmy, for posting up, being one of the first ones to sign on every week and following us, a true fan and the passion about HBCU sports. Every time we catch you, you go inside the numbers and provide certainly good commentary and questions, so we appreciate that.
Appreciate it.
Guys, as we start to close up, any final thoughts in terms of SWAC championship game or the season in general? We're going to put you on the spot tomorrow. We're going to do, during the middle of the show, we're going to break down the season wrap-up session as we kind of go through it, give it a little break in there. So be ready to get your game show face on tomorrow during the HBCU Football Award. I think that'll be a nice touch. We'll try to surprise the people out there and do a little FaceTime on that.
Absolutely. Great.
Any analysis you have, Mike, before we close it?
No, I think both coaches had insightful analysis. I think, we tend to focus on the offensive side of the ball, as we focus, but don't sleep on the defensive side of the ball, especially for Grambling. That's where they have the edge, especially with the turnover ratio. You can say what you want, but when you have that significant turnover ratio or turnover margin, and you're converting those to points, that means Alcorn has to play an almost flawless game. And by the way, they lead the league in penalties.
Yeah.
So.
Certainly, that's always a tough one when you lead the league in penalties. Before I go to you, Charles, I want to give another shout out to Michael D. Jones. He's also been a quite following and enamored about HBCU sports and supported us. We got to get him around when he gets in town to make sure he gets some pictures. You know, he's out there delivering. We got to find a way we can get in front of that camera, boy, because he finds a way to make you look nice.
Well, I mean, first and foremost, this is not going to be October 21st all over again. It's not going to be 41-14. Yeah. I think Alcorn is going to be right in the thick of things. I think Coach Haywood touched on it. They run the ball, and they run the ball well. They can't have 7 turnovers or anything like that. But you're talking about the health of Lenore's Footman. If he's healthy, and they have one of the best running backs in the SWAC, DeLance Turner, P.J. Simmons, I think they can pull off the upset.
So are you calling for the upset?
I have gone against Grambling all season. They proved me wrong all season, and I'm going against them one more time.
Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it.
Mike, your finals analysis, who you have coming out of
I still give the edge to Grambling. Just too much balance on both sides of the ball. And their uncanny ability to find a way in certain situations. They seem to always find a way. So I give the edge to Grambling. Yeah.
Certainly. I haven't went against Grambling much this season. The one time I did, I paid for it. Lost a whole bunch of steaks, so trust me, I'm not in the business of just giving away steaks. They feed me well at Texas Southern University over there. They make sure that I can afford a couple of steaks, but I don't believe to be in the business to give them away. So I tell you what, fellas, I'm going to go with Grambling until the scoreboard clicks and says that they didn't get it done, and I'll come back and I'll tell everybody.
That's fair.
No, Jimmy Wilson is coming in with his score as we start to close up. Grambling 27. Alcorn State Braves 17 sounds good to me. I'm calling for the Grambling State Tigers to get it done. Yep. Although I will say the Celebration Bowl, obviously John Grant didn't get into it, but he's probably pulling for the Braves, particularly after Sutton couldn't get it done because he'd like to sell a couple more tickets. The Braves travel well. Grambling, for the rich history they have, are not traveling as well as they once did in the past. They had fans all over the country. But for whatever reason, those fans in those areas come out to watch the team. But the team, those people around, and maybe that's some of the stuff that happened in Louisiana as they lost some enrollment, that their alumni base is not as big as it could have been if it wasn't for what the state of Louisiana did to the institution in terms of pulling away that money. So let's close up. I want to say I am Dr. Kenyatta Cavilla, sports professor with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop. As we come to close, we hope you enjoyed our conversation with Coach Willie Simmons, Prairie A&M University football coach, Coach Mike Haywood, Texas Southern University football coach, and Executive Director John Grant of the Celebration Bowl of ESPN. We want to thank you for listening to Dr. Kenyatta Cavilla's Inside HBCU Sports Lab radio show with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop every Tuesday from 5:45 to 7:15 right here on KSUH TV 92.9 FM HD2. The vein, we're pumping your system. In the historic KSUH studio in Houston, Texas, www.ksuh-tv.com, ksuh-tv.com. Follow me, Dr. Kenyatta Cavilla, on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. That's DrKenyattacavil. Dream big and continue to move forward. Before we do this, I got to give a shout out to Gerald Rideau. Thank you, Gerald, signing up, checking it out. But as we say at the end of the show, we will talk with you soon. Course lecture dismissed.